to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I have a roll call of supervisors, please? Supervisor Rose? Thank you. Supervisor Belsky and Newt are excused. Moving on to citizens' comments. Any citizens wishing to speak, please state your name and address to the record. Step up to the podium. You'll have 5 minutes. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Duncan. I have lived and worked in this community for over 9 years. For me, having grown up around the Great Lakes, whether it's taking my family to the lighthouse, walking along Southport Beach, or just sitting on a park bench taking in the beauty of the lake, the Kenosha County Lakeshore is part of what makes this community a great place to call home. I came here tonight because I am concerned about the condition of our lakeshore. This concern has been heightened by the conversations that I've had with people in our county. My love for the Great Lakes region and the shared concern of many that have spoken to me about this issue have made the erosion of the lakeshore a high priority for me as I run for the Kenosha County Board. There are both public and private areas that have been affected by erosion due to the extremely high lake levels. Lake levels are higher than they've been for decades, nearing records set in the 1980s. This upward trend is expected to continue over the next several years. As a result, the public and private beaches of Kenosha County, which have sustained significant damage from recent storms, are at risk of further erosion. Many homeowners along the lakeshore are facing hundreds of thousands of dollars in costs to address this situation and must decide to invest in countermeasures or cut their losses and sell. I have met with people who are seriously considering relocating due to this issue. Left unresolved, this issue could put economic strength of our entire county in jeopardy through falling property values and reduced tourism. I have done some research and found, not surprisingly, that this issue affects all of the states in the Great Lakes region. U.S. representatives in Michigan have already reached out to FEMA to address the damage to their shoreline, and I believe that Wisconsin should do the same. I would like to ask that the Kenosha County Board draft a resolution to Senator Tammy Baldwin, Senator Ron Johnson, and Congressman Brian Stile to adopt federal legislation allocating federal aid to address this situation, similar to the FEMA programs already existing to aid those affected by hurricane damage. Whether they amend existing FEMA programs to include the Great Lakes or draft new legislation to address the unique needs of the Great Lakes region, action must be taken sooner rather than later. In closing, I want to commend the work that is already being done by the Great Lakes Commission, the DNR, the University of Wisconsin Sea Grant, the Village of Pleasant Prairie, this board, and I'm sure many others. My hope is that this action will help further address the growing concerns of the citizens of Kenosha County over this issue. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Any other citizens' comments? Please step to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 5 minutes.
Leah Blau, 8355 57th Avenue, Kenosha. People should be able to choose their elected officials, not the other way around, Governor Evers said during a Capitol Press conference this past January, announcing the People's Maps Commission, which aims to draw a new set of legislative maps for Wisconsin following the 2020 U.S. Census. The order mandates no elected officials, public officials, lobbyists, or political party officials can be members of the commission. Instead, it will be made up of experts in nonpartisan redistricting, members from communities of interest, and residents from each of the state's 8 congressional districts. According to statewide polling from the Marquette University Law School, there's strong public support for issues such as medical marijuana and expansion of gun sale background checks. However, the Republican-controlled legislature in Wisconsin has chosen not to move forward on these measures, proving lawmakers are not being accountable to voters. Another Marquette Law School poll conducted in January of 2019 showed Wisconsinites across political perspectives believe that Wisconsin should have nonpartisan maps. The poll stated 83% of Democrats agreed with the proposed change, 76% of independents agreed, and 63% of Republicans agreed with the proposed change. Most Democrats and an increasing number of Republicans have endorsed the Iowa model for fair maps in Wisconsin. So have 2/3 of Wisconsin's counties and nearly 3/4 of statewide respondents. Iowa assigns a neutral state agency to draw its maps without consideration for politics. Instead, Iowa's districts must be drawn as compact as possible and follow established community boundaries without protecting the incumbents of either party. During my tenure on the Kenosha County Board, I was the sponsor of the first Fair Maps resolution calling on the Wisconsin legislature to create a transparent process for drawing state legislative and U.S. congressional district maps, with the board voting 13-7 in favor of the resolution on August 15, 2017. The issue of fair maps has been all over the local and national news for the last several years, yet I am hearing several members of the current Kenosha County Board need more time to ponder this issue. It's been over 2 years since the passage of the resolution in 2017, and there have been multiple resources on this topic. The board will have 8 months to mull over this issue. It's time to stop keeping the power in one place. This issue is about fairness. Elected officials should not be deciding who is deserving of representation. Please give the voters the opportunity to speak and vote in favor of having this Fair Maps referendum on the November 2020 ballot. It's time to stop locking the voters out of the conversation. They deserve a voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizens' comments? Please step to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You will have 5 minutes.
My name is Jody Muirhoff. I live at 7220 First Avenue, Kenosha. And I'm also here to speak in favor of the redistricting referendum. At the Kenosha County Legislative Committee meeting on February 19th, I heard 4 objections to this referendum. 2 county board supervisors objected to the resolution going to the board, saying, "I personally don't know enough about partisan gerrymandering." Wisconsin's gerrymandering case worked its way through state courts, then went to the Supreme Court of the United States. It's one of the most well-documented cases of partisan gerrymandering in U.S. history. The Kenosha County Board also passed a resolution in support of fair maps in 2017. Anyone serving as an elected official here should take the time to know and understand that history. But your knowledge of partisan gerrymandering is not the point of this resolution. You aren't being asked to decide on the merits or disadvantages of nonpartisan redistricting. You are only being asked to allow voters the opportunity to have their say on this issue at the ballot box in November. If you aren't familiar with gerrymandering, you'll have 8 months to learn more about it before you cast your vote. The second objection raised by a county board supervisor was that perhaps gerrymandering is just a myth and the result of the natural sorting of voters. The supervisor quoted from an opinion piece called "The Gerrymander Myth," which appeared in the National Review in 2017. In that opinion piece, the author shared some research that concluded Republicans have a natural advantage because Democratic voters concentrate themselves disproportionately in liberal urban districts, while Republican voters are more evenly distributed in suburban, small town, and rural districts. And that is true. Their research shows that unintentional gerrymandering produces an average Republican bias of 5 points nationwide. But that natural geographic sorting is not what happened in Wisconsin. Wisconsin's voting maps were intentionally manipulated in secrecy by computer programmers who were paid for by lobbyists to produce not a 5% bias in favor of Republicans, but a 13% bias in their favor. In the lawsuit over these manipulated maps, it was revealed that these computer specialists redrew the maps repeatedly until they reached the highest bias possible in favor of Republicans. Researchers from Stanford and Carnegie Mellon, who specifically studied Wisconsin's manipulated maps, determined this advantage was not based on natural sorting or where Democrats lived. They concluded the partisan asymmetry in these maps was carefully and deliberately created and was not the result of the natural clustering of Wisconsin voters. The third objection came from an attendee at that meeting who said that a nonpartisan commission would violate the state constitution. Wisconsin Attorney General Josh Kaul has already determined that maps drawn by a nonpartisan commission would not violate the state constitution, as they would still be presented to legislators for their approval. Allowing voters to have a chance to indicate whether they support a nonpartisan procedure or not sends a powerful message to these legislators. The fourth objection came from another county board supervisor who said there can never be nonpartisan maps because everyone is partisan. Well, there is probably no one more partisan than the people who currently draw our maps, elected officials looking to protect their seats. And people can still be partisan and fair. This has been proven by other states who have successfully implemented some form of nonpartisan redistricting. Iowa has had a nonpartisan redistricting model since 1980. And while Wisconsin taxpayers have paid over $3.5 million due to lawsuits over our gerrymandered maps, Iowa taxpayers have only paid for the transportation costs of having their nonpartisan commission members attend public hearings for comments. The residents of your districts elected you to represent their best interests. This resolution is about letting those residents express their opinion for or against the nonpartisan drawing of our voting maps. Just like those residents, you also will have a chance to express your own personal opinion about nonpartisan redistricting when you step into the ballot box in November. And the only reason residents of Kenosha County would not be able to vote on this advisory referendum is if some of you choose to allow your partisan politics to stand in the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizens' comments? Any citizens' comments? Any other citizens' comments? Please step to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You have 5 minutes.
Amanda Becker, 1807 81st Street. I could never follow Jody. She had a lot of great information and facts. So I just want to let you know that as you heard from Leah, according to the Marquette Law School poll, 72% of Wisconsin voters want nonpartisan commission to draw their maps as opposed to having an elected official draw them. I fall in that 72%. I believe that the people should choose their legislators and not the other way around. I think that people are more than capable of deciding whether or not they would like to see the Wisconsin legislature create a nonpartisan procedure for the preparation of the state district maps, and I'd like us all to have that opportunity come November, the ballot box.
Thank you. Any other citizens' comments? Please keep in line if everybody needs, so we can keep moving this along. I'd appreciate it. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 5 minutes.
Lori Hawkins, 18513 102nd Street, Bristol, Wisconsin. I'm also here to talk about the redistricting referendum. The process, as people have said already, is meant to work in a way that allows voters to choose their elected representatives and not the other way around. With the way our maps are drawn currently, that is not the case, and it never will be when any entity with skin in the game draws the maps for themselves, as what has happened. It only makes sense that maps should be drawn in a nonpartisan manner by a nonpartisan entity. And as long as gerrymandered maps represent the boundaries in Wisconsin, voters will feel disenfranchised. My experience when running for state senate was that voters on either side of the political spectrum felt that their vote didn't matter because the maps had already determined who would win. The last thing that any elected representatives, such as yourselves, should want is to disenfranchise voters. And so what I'm asking is for you to allow the voters to decide how their maps should be drawn. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other citizens' comments? Please state your name and address for the record. You'll have 5 minutes.
My name's Renee Dwyer. I live at 1296 Village Center Drive in Summers. We, the people, should pick politicians, not the other way around. Gerrymandering must end for the integrity of our elections. In America, elections are supposed to reflect the will of the people, not politicians. We all want our voices heard in determining the futures of our family and communities. It's our right. We need to fight for a census in which every person is counted and a process for drawing district boundaries that puts our communities first, not the needs of politicians. Gerrymandering removes choices that voters have the legal right to make. Gerrymandering is a practice intended to establish a political advantage for a political party by manipulating district boundaries. The fundamental principle of an authentic democracy is that every vote is equal, one vote, and that every vote is equal for people to select their representatives, not politicians selecting their voters. Here in Wisconsin, politicians have carved our states into districts that maximize their power and snub the will of the people. The move to ban partisan gerrymandering in Wisconsin grows, and history tells us that our legislators are not going to do anything about this or have the courage to do the right thing unless they get pressured. It is so sad that we have legislators who think that clinging to power is what our writers of our Constitution had in mind, not what is in the minds of the people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other citizens' comments? Any other citizens wishing to speak? Seeing none, citizen comments are closed. Moving on to announcements of the chairman, I'd like to welcome Seth Rosen from PETA Committee. Welcome tonight. That's all I have. Moving on to supervisor reports. Supervisor Alverman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. From our Public Works meeting last evening, we got a report on the events that are occurring. As you've, I'm sure, followed in the press, the Anderson Arts Center held their grand opening, I believe, on the 22nd. Supervisor Kubicki put a pamphlet on your desks showing what the program was for that evening. Everything is done but some landscaping there, and we have gotten rave reviews. The ceremonial courtroom scoping project is ongoing. The courtroom was closed. People are in doing the estimates that we'll need to go after grant funding and eventual bidding. Joint services construction began on January 6th. The evidence area renovation and district attorney juvenile intake. We're creating project drawings and specs at this point. Bids scheduled to be released in March. Highways, I've been reporting on the County W closure due to the Fox River flooding. We were able to put that out to bids quickly. The company that did sheeting for us in the past on Highway W was available. They became the lowest bidder. Came in under our estimate, and that work is going to begin within a week here, March 9th. We're probably looking at, excuse me, months' work of construction to have that road open again. County Highway C Trail project is ongoing. That started on February 11th, and that should be done by mid-July. Also, the good weather enabled us to get a jump on the Brookside parking lot project. County Highway S, Phase 1 was, the bid was awarded to Michaels Corporation, just over $18 million. That is going to be begun this summer. And the Phase 2, all the properties have been acquired for right-of-way. Highway F realignment project. Project is set to be advertised on March 10th, bid opening on April 14th. We expect that construction to begin in June or July. And the Highway K project, we've had some movement on that, dealing with water issues with the drainage, and that may possibly also go under construction sooner than expected. We have many things going on in parks. The Kemper Center was mentioned this evening. We did have FEMA at all our public property there. The city had FEMA here also. Estimates were done. We were a step ahead of everyone, as I've been reporting, because we had all our engineering done. We're actually in the process of getting permits for work on that shoreline. And our estimates, damage assessment by FEMA was $2.1 million. The only thing we're waiting for right now is for the president to authorize public assistance through FEMA to move forward with shoreline and multi-use trail repairs. Many other projects going on at Kemper. There's going to be boiler replaced here in 2020. We're also evaluating windows and tuck pointing on the east side of the building where it gets the most inclement weather. Old Settlers Park, everyone has heard about the Oktoberfest that's held there in conjunction with the county. The Oktoberfest donated $10,000 to the county, to the Parks Division to work on design for the new band shelter. They have been saving to put up a band shelter that will be used for many occasions, not just the Oktoberfest. We're working on roof replacements, bike trails, and Pike River restoration that I've been reporting on. Golf courses are set to open on the 13th of this month, weather permitting. We have been at the Chicago Golf Show, will be attending the Milwaukee Golf Show upcoming. The golf simulator is up and running and doing very good business. We are, again, held back a little bit by the foul weather we had in the fall on cart paths that we didn't get completed, but we will be open for walking in those areas. We also got a jump on hiring this year and have done quite well, much better than last year, by doing that very early in the winter, and made 5 new hires for the golf courses in the past week, and are in the process of interviewing some 30 more people that are interested. And I guess we'll all know what happens with the golf courses shortly. The 13th is coming up, and people are getting itchy. Chiller replacement and facilities at the Kenosha County Center is actually ready to go. They are clean, flushed, filled with glycol, and will be tested. Planning and development remodeling is done. If you get a chance, stop in there if you haven't been in the offices. It streamlined things, made much better use of some of the space, and apparently the staff is very happy with it. So that's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Opperman. Supervisor Gens, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to take a minute to thank this board. Every year, once a year, we bring a joint services budget before you. And to your credit, nobody really tries to stop any of that. And when we get the public safety taken care of. And that is a testament to us as a board. And I want to thank you for that. I'm also going to read to you something that was forwarded to me by the Director of Joint Services. If you'll remember, I reported on text to 911 last summer, and in May we got the last provider on board, and we announced to the public on June 25th that text to 911 was now possible. So I'm going to read this to you. It's short. I won't bore you with it, but I think it's very important so we know how we're protecting our constituents, okay? On February 29th at 9 a.m., Kenosha Police Department responded to a report of an adult male who was armed with a handgun, holding a female adult and a male juvenile at gunpoint. Communication was established through text to 911 application. An open line of text communication was maintained by the juvenile victim inside the house and the 911 dispatchers. Information was obtained in the communication center and relayed to law enforcement officers in the field. The incident lasted for approximately 1 hour. There were many text exchanges between the juvenile victim and the 911 dispatchers. The application functioned as it was designed and played a significant role in communication and exchange of information throughout the incident. The incident concluded safely with no injuries to anyone involved. This was our first significant and protracted event where the text to 911 application was utilized and it functioned flawlessly. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Uhas, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, tonight I'd like to give you an update on the Pringle Nature Center on which I serve as Kenosha County's representative. Educational programs have been well attended. On January 9th, 11 homeschool science students in the grades 3 through 5 attended What Lurks in the Woods class. Students guessed which animals they were and sorted them into different forest layers, learned that birds call at different times of the day, completed their monthly phenology study, and examined critters found in leaf litter and soil samples under microscopes. In the K through 2 grade homeschool science, on January 10th, the theme was Keeping Warm. 13 students attended the morning session and 9 in the afternoon. Students acted out different animal strategies for keeping warm in the winter, measured temperature differences in an insulation experiment, completed their monthly phenology study, and built their own shelters in the woods. On January 4th, 35 participants joined this month's nature hike on an unusually warm day. In spite of the mud, visitors enjoyed hiking to the viewing platform and back, with some participants returning for hot cocoa in the Nature Center. On January 25th, Leave No Child Inside Snow Day had 71 participants. Children made paper snowflakes inside the Nature Center, then ventured outside to make snow paintings, identify snowflake types, find colored ice cubes on scavenger hunts, and build snowmen. Some upcoming events for the Pringle Nature Center are on Saturday, March 7th from 10 to 11 a.m. There's a nature hike. Get some of your vitamin D and N nature by joining us on the first Saturday of every month for hiking and exploring different parts of Bristol Woods. Each hike will be led by a naturalist and focus on seasonal highlights. Open to all ages, but children must be accompanied by an adult, and there is no fee for this program. There's a theme called Paws on the Path. Normally, we ask for you to leave your pups at home for programs, but we're encouraging you to bring them to this special nature hike. Bring your pooch on a leash and meet us in front of the Pringle Nature Center for a hike with other dog lovers in the community. There is no pre-registration required for that. And then out at Petrifying Springs, there's going to be a couple maple syrup hikes on Saturday, March 14th and Saturday, March 21st from 10 to 11:45 a.m. Warm weather means maple syrup. Come out to Petrifying Springs, and you can do some hands-on tapping and some free sugar mapling. On April 11th, there's going to be an egg drop die and roll out at Bristol Woods. Children can make an egg parachute and then test your handiwork by dropping it in some eggs using colors from nature. There is a fee for that, $6 if you're a friend of Pringle, and $8 if you are in the public. And then also, I just wanted to touch real quick on last night at the Public Works and Facilities meeting. Barry Thomas, president of the Nature Center Board, attended the meeting to congratulate Supervisor Dennis Elverman for his 25 years of service to Kenosha County and to the entire Kenosha County Park system. Dennis was presented with a certificate of appreciation and a lifetime family membership to the Pringle Nature Center. And then I encourage you all to please check out the new Pringle Nature Center website at pringlenc.org. It's been completely revamped, and I think you'll find it very user-friendly. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Uhaas. Seeing no other supervisor reports are closed. County Clerk.
County Executive Appointments, 32, Michelle Milosevic to serve on the Kenosha County Library System Board.
Refer to Finance Administration Committee.
33, Mark Midori to serve on the Kenosha Joint Services Board.
Refer to Judiciary and Law Committee.
34, Rita Ventura to serve on the Kenosha County Board of Health.
Refer to Human Services Committee.
New business. Resolution 1 reading, 77, a resolution calling on the state legislature to pass 2019 AB 491 and 2019 SB 442 to prohibit vaping wherever smoking is prohibited. Supervisor Nudo, aye. Berg, aye. Boyd Frederick, aye. Franco, aye. Nordigan, aye. Gashke, aye. Mauer, excused.
Thank you. Supervisor Berg, you have the floor.
I move Resolution 77.
Thank you. I have a motion by Supervisor Berg and a second by Supervisor Gasky. Supervisor Berg.
AB 491 and SB 442 are both bills that have absolute bipartisan support in the state legislature. Michelle Sandberg of the Kenosha Racine Walworth Tobacco Free Coalition came and spoke to us at the legislative committee when this was brought forward. And some of the things that she had brought up were kind of disturbing. One of them was that while tobacco use in our schools has decreased, just like our street drugs, something is falling into place, and that is vaping. Part of what scared me when Michelle came and spoke to the Kenosha County Opioid Task Force was that just like our technology, vaping has gotten better, if you want to say, to the manufacturing, in the respect that when the individual inhales from the vaping utensil, the molecules or the droplets are so much smaller that they're able to get further down into the lungs, which, if anybody knows, fluid in the lungs to me says pneumonia, so I don't know why we would want to put vapor into our lungs. Something else that she brought up was that President Trump had signed into law banning certain flavored vaping items. The problem with that, though, is that because that's not our state law, our law enforcement in the state cannot enforce that, so it's pretty much nil to us. Again, it was voted unanimously in the legislative committee, and I seek your approval.
Thank you. We have some discussion. Supervisor Nordigan, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The ironic part about this was vaping was originally developed to have smoking cessation, so to quit smoking. And they quickly found out, boy, this is a great thing for kids, not going to hurt them. And just like what was reported by Supervisor Berg, the depth of now the technology of what the product can get into your lungs is causing what's called a popcorn lung. And they've never seen this in vaping until just recently, and it's going to get worse. And these kids just think it's perfectly fine, perfectly safe, and I hope that we're going to get to the point where we're going to ban vaping as we ban smoking. So I'm going to fully support this as I did in Legislative Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Nordigan. Seeing no other discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Resolution passes.
'78, a resolution to conduct a countywide advisory referendum on the creation of a nonpartisan procedure for the preparation of legislative and congressional redistricting plans and maps. Supervisor Nudo, aye. Berg, aye. Boyd Frederick, aye. Franco, aye. Nordigan, nay. Gashke, aye. Mauer, excused.
Thank you. Supervisor Berg, you have the floor.
I move Resolution 78.
Thank you. I have a motion by Supervisor Berg and a second by Supervisor Franco. Supervisor Berg.
I'm anticipating discussion tonight. I'll go ahead and open that up.
Okay. So you'll move the resolution. We do have some discussion. So you're all done, Supervisor Berg? Okay. Thank you. Supervisor Decker, you have the floor. There was a second by Franco, yes, sir. Yeah. Supervisor Decker, I'm sorry, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to amend the resolution to change the question from, should the Wisconsin legislature create a nonpartisan procedure for the preparation of state legislative and U.S. congressional district maps, and change it to, should the Wisconsin legislature create a nonpartisan procedure for the preparation of all district maps at all levels of government, federal, state, county, and municipal in the state of Wisconsin.
Okay, there's an amendment on the floor. Do I have a second? Second. There's a second. I'm going to clear the board. We're going to have discussion on the amendment.
Who was the second?
Second was Supervisor Sklitsky. And give us a little time. We're a little short-staffed up here tonight. Thank you. So, discussion on the amendment. Yes, ma'am, you do.
Thank you. The reason why I'm proposing this amendment is because of what this, the citizen comments were said, that elected officials shouldn't be able to draw their own maps. And I agree with them on that portion, but I believe it should be all levels of government. I remember in 2010, a lot of you weren't here on the county board at that time, or I take that back, 2011, after the 2010 census. I was on the redistricting committee, and I remember we had maps drawn up, and Supervisor Boyd Frederick asked us to change one of the maps. Actually, he asked us to change his map. After beating Supervisor Nudo in his election by a handful of votes, he apparently didn't want to run against him again, so he asked and had the maps changed so Supervisor Nudo was redistricted out of his district against Supervisor Nudo was placed into Supervisor Singer's district, thinking that Nudo would not beat Singer. So it happens on all levels of government that elected officials try to redistrict maps in their favor. So I believe we should change this question that a nonpartisan procedure be put in place for all levels of government for maps. That is my reasoning. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else, Supervisor Decker?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion in regards to Supervisor Decker's amendment to this resolution? Seeing no discussion.
Just be clear.
Excuse me?
Amendment again?
Yes, I need the language also.
Yes, could you please read it again? Again,
Sure.
we're short-staffed up here. Please bear with us.
Yep.
Thank you.
Should the Wisconsin legislature create a nonpartisan procedure for the preparation of all district maps at all levels of government, federal, state, county, and municipal in the state of Wisconsin?
And one more time.
Yep.
I mean, I just
No,
want
I
everybody, I want
understand.
everybody to be clear because I'm not clear. So,
Should the Wisconsin legislature create a nonpartisan procedure for the preparation of all district maps at all levels of government, federal, state, county, and municipal, in the state of Wisconsin? So right now, the question reads just for the state legislature and U.S. congressional maps. So I'm asking that all levels of government, a nonpartisan procedure be established by the Wisconsin State Legislature.
okay.
Aaron, could you tell me if this is correct?
All district maps at all levels of, yes, and that's in addition to the first part of the sentence.
The first language?
Yes.
So,
Okay.
but the amendment is
Yes.
just the language? Okay.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
The amendment is changing the language, correct?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Thank you for clarification, I do appreciate it. We do have discussion. Supervisor Franco, you have the floor.
Yeah, just a question. Obviously, the intent of this particular resolution was for the U.S. Congressional and State Senate and State Representative District. I just have a question, and maybe I can address that to Corp Counsel or someone who can address this. When redistricting takes place every 10 years, doesn't the U.S. Redistricting for U.S. congressional districts and for state senate and state rep also have an impact on local districts as well? Aren't they reconfigured based upon the drawing of the lines of the state and federal districts? Isn't that, or is that something that's totally separate? Because I think there's some confusion as to how that's done.
So that's the question you're asking through the chair of the
Right.
Corporation Council?
Right, or to anyone who
I can
might
answer
have
that.
an affirmative.
Before Corporation Council answers, Supervisor Decker, can you?
Actually, right now, the county boards are basically the first steps in redistricting. We come up with the wards and the district maps, or actually, we come up with our district maps, and the municipalities come up with the wards based on that, and then it flows upwards. So the state legislature had to wait for us to get our wards and maps done before they could, especially the wards, before they could draw. It doesn't trickle down, it trickles up.
Okay, but, all right, but when it's done at the local level, whether it's municipal or county, is there a history of county and municipal districts being gerrymandered?
I just explained one.
Well, that's one, but is there a...
That's a history.
Yeah, I don't think we need to debate what happened.
No, I'm just trying to understand it,
I
because
understand.
I've never heard of local districts being an issue when it comes to gerrymandering, but, I mean, I suppose it's theoretically possible.
I think she answered your question.
Okay.
So do you have a legal question for Corporation Council?
Yeah.
Corporation Council, do you have to weigh in on this, potentially?
Certainly, the procedure that Supervisor Decker described accurately indicates what happened the last redistricting process. I have a vague recollection, and I apologize because I would have to look at it and research. It was my recollection that at some point during the last decade, the state legislature may have made some changes to the law so that they weren't, in fact, the last step in the process. And I have a vague recollection that there is some direction in terms of the congressional districts being done first, but I don't say that definitively because I would have to look it up to see if that is the current state of the law. Certainly, as I said, the way Supervisor Decker described the process was the process 10 years ago, in that the county board has the first crack at, or had the first crack at drawing the supervisory districts. The municipalities were then supposed to fill those districts in with wards and then draw their own districts based on those wards.
Okay.
And to your knowledge, that would be the same today?
I'm not certain.
Okay.
As I said, if there's an
It's
interest, I
probable.
can see if I can find it, but it certainly that was the process.
Okay. Anything
Okay.
else, Supervisor Franklin?
No, I'm good.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Rose, you have the floor.
All right, thank you. I would oppose the amendment. I think that local government ought to be dealing with this issue as we have in the past. State legislature can deal with their issues, but it's certainly the part of the power of local home rule, which has been part of state government and local governments for many years, that we deal with our problems best here at the local level, and that we know the issues here at the local level better than they do at the state level. So I don't think that the problem has been at the local level, and why we can cite a problem here or there. In general, the government here in Kenosha has done a good job at the redistricting. I haven't heard of complaints about redistricting at the local level in places like Dane County or Waukesha or the other 72 counties in the state. So I see no problem here to respond to. We can always cite one or two instances where some issue like was cited by Supervisor Decker. The board did adopt the procedure or the map that was drawn here with some dissent, but it was certainly by majority vote. So I don't think we need to muddy the waters here. I think the proposition is pretty clear. State legislature can deal with the state issues, and we can deal with our local issues as we have in the past. So I'm going to vote no on the amendment.
That's it, Supervisor Rose?
Yes.
Thank you. Supervisor Alverman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've had my district call 3 different numbers in my time here, so 28, 27, and 23, I think. I have people that talked me into voting, or running the first time that can't even vote for me anymore. And they live right in the center of the village of Twin Lakes. So this kind of thing happens. And I believe if we are in favor of having it done at the state level, we shouldn't be scared of having it done at the local level. The main thing is, since some of you know, I hold both parties in the same regard. And it's usually not a very strong regard. So if we are willing to do it at the state level, I'd certainly be willing to do it at the local level. I have one concern, and possibly, so I mean, I'll vote for this amendment as long as we don't talk all night on a very logical move on the main motion then. If you're afraid of that, that's ridiculous. So I think we should talk about the school districts. And I wonder if the Corporation Council has an opinion on that, because we can't weigh in on school districts.
Corporation Council?
If I'm understanding the question correctly, Supervisor, you're asking if under Supervisor Decker's amendment, which would include all levels of redistricting.
Right.
I don't believe that the school districts are involved in redistricting, at least locally. I believe all the seats are elected at large, so I don't know that they have districts that have to be redistricted.
That was my only concern, if we would be wanting to mention or just exclude school districts in the amendment. For purposes of discussion, I'll say that I don't know that the way that Unified has theirs set up is everywhere. I seem to recall a few years ago, Racine was looking at the possibility of moving to districted seats for their school district. So, I mean, I don't know that I have a good answer for you. I mean, it's a question that it could be part of it or not, as this board wishes.
Well, let me interject. The maker of the motion, do you mind if you take out school districts? Is that an issue? Hold on, let me turn you on here. Thank you.
I don't think it's necessary. I know that Central High School has seats on the board, the school board based on your municipality. They're not actually drawn by wards or by the school board. It's based on municipality. Any other of the school board school boards in the county, they are at large. They don't have districted seats.
Okay. So let this board be apprised that there's really no effect to the school board. Okay? Anything else, Supervisor
Thank you.
Alvin?
No.
Thank you. Supervisor Sklitsky, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think having a consistent, excuse me, a consistent procedure from top to bottom makes absolute sense to me. I'll support this amendment because there's no question of whether at the highest levels or the lowest levels, what is the procedure that's being followed. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Decker, did you have your light on?
I turned it on from before.
Did you want?
No.
Okay. Let me clear the board here. Any other discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, there's a roll call requested. Yes, if you're in favor of the amended resolution as Supervisor Decker has presented. No, if you're not. This is for the amendment. Yep, we are voting on the amendment. Yes, if you're in favor of the amendment and the redistricting all the way up and down on every level. No, if you're not. That amendment to that resolution passes.
So then, what now?
Supervisor Alvin?
I move the question as amended.
Do I have a second? I have a motion by Supervisor Alvin to move the question as amended and a second by Supervisor Decker. Let's clear the board and see if there's any discussion in regard to that. Supervisor Nordigan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, I want to go back to, I think it was a statement made, maybe it was today, by Supervisor Geschke on one of his posts, and that was voting is important, but an informed voter is more important. And I agree with that 100%. And I guess just some of the wording up here I want to get clarification on. Whereas Governor Evers, in his most recent State of the State address, is moving forward with an executive order to address the problem of gerrymandering with a nonpartisan commission in order to produce a people's map that will be submitted to a legislature year. So I guess the question is Governor Evers going to be the one that puts this nonpartisan commission together?
I don't think we know that, sir.
I'm sorry?
I don't think we know that.
We don't know that.
I would assume that he would be the one that, his administration.
Okay, because again, if that is the case, then, you know, obviously all governors are partisan.
He should be discussing calling the question. Well, right.
Right, it's non-debatable. So, there was a call to question?
Yes.
Okay. So that's non-debatable. So we're going to vote on the resolution as amended. Oh, I'm sorry. You guys are moving too fast. To close debate, is there a roll call? Okay, there's a roll call requested to close debate, call the question on the resolution. We need 2/3 vote.
And it was Elderman and who seconded?
Decker, I apologize. We're a little short-staffed up here. I'll keep telling you.
And he's calling the question for?
Resolution as amended. 78. Yes if you're in favor, no if you're not. Okay. So yes if you're in favor of closing debate and calling the question, no if you're not. Yeah, we need to. We don't have 2/3. No, the debate stays open on this. Fails. So debate on this issue. Supervisor Poole, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I formerly lived in the state of Illinois in the 17th Congressional District, and that was a perfect example of gerrymandering, as it was covered areas north of the Quad Cities all the way down to the north of Springfield, and in some areas it was only a township wide. So I know what gerrymandering is, and I don't think we have a problem with it here in Wisconsin, so I will not be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Nordigan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since we're I don't know, I guess I'm assuming that the current governor will be producing or developing the nonpartisan commission. That brings up a bunch of questions for me as trying to be informed on putting this out there to the electorate. Absolutely on the surface, should we create a nonpartisan procedure for the preparation of all the district maps? And it sounds good on the surface, it really does. I just have a problem with what's going on, how we're going to get there. Governor is partisan. Is every governor before him is partisan? How will the commission be comprised? We don't know.
How will, how many people are going to be appointed? Where are they going to come from? What are the requirements? Do they have to live in urban areas, suburban areas? You have to be doctors, lawyers, attorneys, registered voters. Who knows what this could lead to? Kind of begs the question is it the right thing to do without enough information? I don't want to, we got to vote on it so we know what's in it type of thing. I think that's the wrong way of trying to get information out to our electorate. We give an example of the electorate, Lake County, Illinois. I grew up in Lake County, lived there. Now I've been a Wisconsin resident longer than I was an Illinois resident, but it was a Republican county for decades and decades. But in the last 10 years, it became a Democrat county, simply because of the people voting for their electorate. And those electorate are the ones who do the, you want to call it gerrymandering? Fine, but they draw their district maps. This came up originally in 2017. My question is, why did it not get put forth then? Well, did we have a partisan governor at that time? That's going to be my assumption. And actually, even though the current method is not perfect, kind of works. Why should one person decide who the nonpartisan people are going to be when our electorate is? We are a representative republic, and we vote on the people to represent us. And we can go ahead and not vote for them if that's what they're going to do, is not produce a map that we believe it should be. And I guess I'll finish up with this is the state constitution gives the power to the legislature to do this. We're sworn to uphold the state constitution. Maybe the better question on this should have been, should we change the Constitution to develop a nonpartisan procedure? Thank you.
Thank you. Clear the board here. Oh, I'll get you Supervisor Frankel. You have the floor.
Yes, there are several bills. I mentioned this in committee, one in the state Senate and one in the state Assembly that is attempting to deem gerrymandering as unconstitutional, or in this case, make it unrepresentative in Wisconsin. But there's also a bill being brought forth, it was brought forth a month ago in the state Assembly, I believe, to come up with a constitutional amendment for the state of Wisconsin to do away with this particular practice. So it is out there. There are attempts, and the model that Governor Evers is talking about is based on the Iowa model, which was discussed actually in citizens' comments. It's something that's going to be presented, but ultimately it's nonpartisan in nature. There are no politicians on either side. It's as nonpartisan as you're going to get. The model in Iowa has been very effective for the past 40 years as a model, literally a model for all states in terms of presenting a way to redistrict in as nonpartisan a way as possible. Obviously, I take your point. I mean, none of us here, or anyone for that matter, is purely objective and purely nonpartisan. But leaving politicians alone, and in particular the politicians of a particular party that happened to win in that year, giving them the sole authority to determine the districts is about as partisan as you can get. The whole point of this is to try to get to a point where these districts are drawn in such a way that both sides can accept it, because ultimately that's really what's going to have to happen. If partisan maps are drawn in next year, and of course this also depends on who wins and what the circumstances are in terms of what the ratio is, but ultimately it's what Governor Evers is doing is presenting something in advance in an attempt to try to prevent, because ultimately, presumably you could veto the maps if he thinks they're too partisan, and then some sort of resolution has to come up. I'm not sure that the Republicans have come up with an alternative. This is probably the best alternative we have in trying to determine or trying to make the districts as nonpartisan as possible. Can you find problems with it? Oh, I'm sure you could, but it's a heck of a lot better than what we got now. And it's a step ahead in the right direction, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to interject that we're spending a lot of time on partisanship when we're a nonpartisan body. I'm going to interject that, okay? Supervisor Decker, you have the floor.
I just want to state some facts. And this is talking about partisanship because we're talking about the state legislature drawing partisan maps. That's why this question has come up. Democrats failed to enact such a nonpartisan solution during all the decades that controlled the Wisconsin state legislature. Did you know in 1982, after the Democratic-controlled Senate and State Assembly passed maps and the Republican governor could not come to an agreement, the independent nonpartisan court enacted a map for the state of Wisconsin. When Democrats took control of the state legislature, which they had, plus the governorship, in 1983, they proceeded to replace the nonpartisan map with partisan plans. And at that time, Cloyd Porter, who represented the area that I live, was redistricted with Mary Kay Wagner, and expecting that Cloyd Porter would lose his seat against Mary Kay Wagner, but Cloyd Porter won that seat again, and that was one of the maps that was redrawn with partisan politics involved. Instead of creating a nonpartisan commission, Democrats in late 2010 actually contemplated passing new maps during the lame duck legislative session right before Governor Walker was, right after he was elected, but before he was sworn in. And now Democrats claim they want nonpartisan commissions, but what they are really trying to do is rig the system in their favor by creating commissions that they ultimately control. There is no such thing as nonpartisan commission because the members would be appointed by partisans. For evidence of this, look at what happened with the Nonpartisan Governmental Accountability Board. That nonpartisan body engaged in blatantly partisan activities that had to be shut down by state and federal courts. Arizona has a nonpartisan commission consisting of 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, and 1 nonpartisan person. The nonpartisan official was later accused of gross misconduct by colluding with the Democrat members to rig a vote relating to the hiring of a consultant. Even if it was possible to create a nonpartisan body, this would not solve the Democrats' primary problem with the Wisconsin map. Democrats are hyper-concentrated and win a smaller number of seats than their share of the statewide vote. If a nonpartisan body created a map using non-political data, that map would create more Republican seats than Democrat seats due to the Democrat voter concentration. It's a simple fact. Democrats in the media would then cry foul and insist that the commission incorporate political data and create a fair map that evens out the number of seats. This would lead to gerrymandering and bizarrely shaped districts like we see in so many other states. This Democrat effort to even out the number of GOP and Democrat seats would also likely violate the Voting Rights Act and put African American legislators and districts at risk. Here's what you get from a nonpartisan redistricting commission. California's commission created a map that is tilted heavily in favor of Democrats and violated traditional principles such as compactness. There are 46 Democrat seats in Congress from California and only 7 Republicans. And you can see it by, if you just look at the maps, how they gerrymander districts, people in and out of the districts to control the populations to keep the seats. With that being said, I am still voting in favor of this resolution because I believe that as elected officials and representatives, we should be able to listen to what our voters want, and putting a question on the ballot as a referendum is a great way to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Decker. Supervisor Gens, you have the floor.
What motion is before us, Mr. Chairman?
The motion before us is the amended resolution number 78. And if the maker of the motion would like to restate your...
No,
okay.
I heard
okay.
it.
Just
I'm
want to
good.
make sure you know.
I'm good. I got it. I just wanted to know what was before us. I mean, how anybody could sit here and say this is nonpartisan is just beside me. I mean, we as a county board are nonpartisan. And this is a state issue. And the governor has even said, I'm going to set up a committee for it. It's going to be presented to the legislators, which I would think we would take a track of, just like 77, a resolution calling on the state legislature to do something rather than putting it on the ballot. But I mean, there's just this.
We've done that already.
This is partisan, and I mean, I'll go along with it as amended. But if we get further into the weeds than that, I'm going to be abstaining, because I've made a rule to myself that I'll put things on the ballot that have public safety and a financial impact to my constituents in mind. But this is partisan, and I'm getting a headache. So that's all I have to say.
Anything else, Supervisor?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Thank you. Supervisor Frankel, you have the floor.
I just want to say really quickly, the only thing that Supervisor Decker has established is that gerrymandering is bad no matter who does it, Republican or Democrat. That's all she's established. And all the more reason why we should be voting for this resolution.
Okay.
It doesn't matter who does it, whether Republican or Democrat, it's wrong. It's unconstitutional, it's unrepresentative, undemocratic, whatever you want to use. And the status quo that we have is partisan. The whole import of this particular resolution is to get the state to use a nonpartisan method or procedure. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay, thank you. I see Supervisor Grady. I'm going to clear the board here. Supervisor Grady, you have the floor.
I'd move to call the question.
We have a motion by Supervisor Grady and a second by Supervisor Rose to call the question. It is not open for debate, for discussion, so if you're ready to stop the discussion and close debate, vote yes. If you're not, vote no. So we need 2/3 vote. Again, yes if you're in favor of calling the question to close the discussion on this, no if you're not. Just a few minutes to...
Sorry. And there.
Okay? Supervisor Decker. Okay. That passes. Debate is closed. Now we're on the resolution as amended. There's been a roll call requested. Yes if you are in favor of the resolution as amended, no if you are not. Give us a few minutes, please.
There you go.
Okay.
I like your amendment. What's good for the goose is good for the gander.
It's funny that the people that support
Supervisor Poole. That passes. We're moving on. Thank you. County Clerk.
Communication 41, communication from the Finance and Administration Committee, a resolution authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $3,840,000 taxable general obligation refunding bonds.
Refer to Finance Administration Committee.
42, communication from the Finance and Administration Committee, a resolution authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $12,125,000 general obligation refunding bonds.
Refer to Finance Administration Committee.
Number 43, communication from the Legislative Committee, a resolution to conduct countywide advisory referendum on making the state of Wisconsin a Second Amendment sanctuary state.
Refer to Legislative Committee.
Number 44, communication from the Legislative Committee, a resolution declaring Kenosha County a Second Amendment sanctuary county.
Refer to Legislative Committee.
Claims, number 20, John Carlson property damage.
Refer to Corporation Council.
And approval of the February 19th, 2020 minutes by Supervisor Poole.
Supervisor Poole, you have the floor.
Move to approve minutes as presented.
I have a motion by Supervisor Poole and a second by Supervisor Rodriguez. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Can I have a motion to adjourn? I have a motion to adjourn by Supervisor Rodriguez and a second by Supervisor Kubicki. All those in favor say aye. Thank you. We're adjourned. Yep.